we have the potential to not only impact brand awareness, but building brand loyalty and increasing brand perception. And some of the best ways to do this are engaging individuals over the course of time. Be proactive.
Hello, I'm Steve Chamberlain, and welcome to Insightpool Television. This is part of a series of videos that we're going to produce on a number of subjects related to social media. My personal background is entertainment. I was with Turner Broadcasting for 13 years and ran the home entertainment group. And then I got involved in technology myself and became an investor in WebMD in the late 90s. I've made a total of 24 investments, mostly in technology over the years. Had some wonderful outcomes, 4 to be exact. I've had 9 bankruptcies, and I've had 11 now that are active. And Insightpool is one of the most exciting companies that I've ever been part of. With me today is Chris Walters, who is the Chief Operating Officer of the Weather Channel. Welcome.
Thank you.
To our show here, Chris. I'm fascinated by the Weather Channel. I mean, I was there at the beginning with Turner Broadcasting and knew so many of the people early on. And certainly it was, back then, just a cable company. I mean, that's what you did, and dealt with all the MSOs across the country. Fast forward 25 years later, you're no longer a cable company. Why don't you talk a little bit about what the Weather Channel has become?
Sure. It's really evolved from a very successful cable network, which is the most distributed in the country, in every home that pays for television, to a data company, right? And our core asset is providing the best weather. And we define the best weather in many ways, but really the science of it is combining atmospheric science and computer science to produce the most accurate forecast in the world. And then we want to build great services for consumers and businesses, which is the television network, the leading digital properties in the world. I think we now have a mobile business that's almost unrivaled. I think we have the 2nd most downloaded iPad app in history, the 7th most downloaded iPhone app in history. We power lots of other people's digital properties who want to tell weather stories, other media outlets, lots of local TV stations, and many businesses. So most major airlines use our products for flight planning. Many leading energy traders use our products, and it's all being driven by that core data asset.
Mm-hmm. You know, I grew up in an era where you had rabbit ears. You know, you had 3 choices in television: ABC, NBC, and CBS. And so along comes HBO and Turner Broadcasting with TBS in the late 70s. And I was part of the early sales team in selling the networks to the cable operators across the country. And back then it was a tough sale. You know, you had to convince people that there was more to life than 3 network stations. And so along comes the internet in the late 90s, and it's like taking a piece of glass and hitting it with a hammer, and it shatters into 10,000 pieces. You are now in charge of managing some of those 10,000 pieces. How do you do that?
Well, so it's an extraordinarily competitive environment. So if you just think about how the company has had to change its view on the competition, it's very, very different, right? So if you take mobile applications, there are thousands and thousands of mobile applications focused on weather. And so to have a leadership position, the kind of innovation that's required and the intense focus on consumers to ultimately deliver something that's incredibly distinctive has had to increase over time. To build the position that we do have. I think the other challenge is just staying on top of both technology and kind of what the consumer trends are to constantly evolve the products to deliver incredibly high response times, very, very compelling experiences that engage people deeply. But it's running at a very different pace than we have as a company historically. And staying attuned to customer needs is really the core.
You know, it wasn't too long ago, Reggie Bradford, who was the founder and CEO of Vitru, we went and had a meeting at the Weather Channel. It wasn't long after Hurricane Katrina, and I remember them sitting there telling me, like, he had 100 million hits, like, in an hour. How on earth do you plan for something like that? I mean, the systems that you must have in place to deal with that kind of volume?
So it's changing all the time. Part of what we're doing right now is continuing to make some very, very substantial investments in our infrastructure and actually transitioning to using cloud services far more to be able to manage those spikes. If you take Hurricane Sandy as an example, that was an unprecedented level of digital traffic, because what you've got is the audiences still come in droves, where I think we reached about 50% of the US population on television in a very, very short period of time in a day. But on digital platforms, I think we deliver about 500 million page views in a 24-hour period, which requires some incredibly flexible very, very flexible technical infrastructure, and actually a lot of creativity from our tech team, because we haven't fully moved to the cloud, and so we can't use and just spin up lots of instances from outsourced providers. But we're constantly evolving how we're working, and honestly, you have to invest. Today, we have more hardware than we need to ultimately meet the spikes, but tomorrow we'll actually use outsourced providers primarily.
That's fascinating. I want to shift the conversation here now to social media, something near and dear to my heart, and I'm obviously an investor here at Insightpool. Share some of your insights. What are you learning? Is it almost a daily revelation for you with Facebook and LinkedIn and Pinterest and all these things? Share with me a little bit of your thinking on it.
Well, so it's interesting because social is both a source of feedback from consumers, a method or a way to engage consumers who are interested in our content, and a way to solicit feedback on our products. And so social means so much to us, where there are things that we do. Our social team is constantly communicating with audiences who have interest in our products, and that's really outbound communication. As I said, they're listening to understand what people are thinking about what we're doing. I mean, we're also building products because weather is inherently a social topic, right? Where people are constantly, and this is way before there was even digital technology, one of the things that people spoke about most frequently was, what's the weather going to be like today?
Right.
And so transitioning to a more digital world, how do you actually embed weather into the digital conversation? And so we've innovated around in a variety of ways from a product perspective to enable the sharing of weather information, the sharing of weather-oriented content. One great example of this is something we did with Facebook, where we built a product called My Friend's Weather. And what we're allowing people to do is when they come to our digital products, when they log in with their Facebook credentials, they can understand of any of their friends who might be impacted by severe weather, right? And so you're letting them know so they can actually alert their friends or reach out if they're interested. You can also push weather content into Facebook streams. We think about social pretty broadly in all those ways.
So, Chris, we were talking about how the Weather Channel has really morphed into much more than weather, dramatizations, recreations, and you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So as I said, what we're trying to do is really understand the consumer's need at different times of the day on different platforms. So if you take mobile, generally people are looking for a very quick hit of information. They want current conditions, they want an hourly forecast, a 10-day forecast, and then some small portion of them want to be entertained, and that portion that want to be entertained is generally going to be a short clip of video or something that's very quick and engaging. On television, it's completely different. In the morning, they'll engage for a little bit longer. They want to prepare for their day. But in the evening, honestly, they want to be entertained. And so that's why we're investing in long-form half-hour or hour-long programs that are focused on the audience that's coming to us and has a connection with our brand, but during that period of the day, delivering them the kind of programming that really directly meets their needs. And so we're thinking about that across the web, mobile phones, tablets, and television itself. And in each case, the needs are a bit different depending on the time of the day and the consumer profile.
Just a note about Insightpool. We're in the business of creating software that identifies key brand influencers that companies like the Weather Channel can use to amplify your audience. Have you thought about that much?
So we have, and we're really intrigued by who the key influencers are in the social world, because they'll shape, opinion leaders ultimately will shape much broader portions of the population and their behavior. And ultimately, that will drive engagement with our products across all platforms. And so we're really intrigued to understand who those individuals are, how to engage them, and ultimately, how do we get their input? As I described, social for us is one mechanism to solicit input on the things that we're doing, and ultimately for us to refine our products based on that input.
So where do you think we are in this continuum of understanding social media and all that we've talked about with data?
So I think we're in the very, very early stages, right? People are just beginning to collect all of the relevant information, but there's still more and more data that's being thrown off all the time by many, many different devices and by individual behavior. And so even when you have a lot of information, figuring out the insights that you can extract from that, we're at the forefront of really understanding. And then taking that insight and figuring out the actions that businesses can take to deliver more value to consumers and their partners, we're just scratching the surface right now. So I expect it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun over the next 5 to 10 years to see how the market evolves and how businesses can improve the products and services they deliver based on this insight.
Well, I happen to agree. Thanks for coming in, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
Being part of this. Yeah. That's it from Insightpool Television.